Imagine pouring your heart into a dream, only to watch it crumble again and again. Each failure feels heavier than the last, and the world seems to move on without you. What if the path to success isn't about avoiding mistakes, but learning to rise after every fall? This is the story of Leila, a young engineer whose relentless failures almost broke her, but led her to a discovery that would change everything. Leila had always been ambitious. From a young age, she dreamed of creating solutions that could change the world. Her notebooks overflowed with sketches, calculations, and wild ideas that no one else dared attempt. When she landed her first engineering project after college, she felt unstoppable. Finally, her chance to prove herself had arrived. But reality hit harder than she expected. Her first prototype failed spectacularly. A simple miscalculation caused the system to shut down during testing, costing her weeks of work and the trust of her investors. She pored over her design again and again, but each revision seemed to crumble under pressure. What should have been small obstacles grew into mountains she couldn't climb. Leila's colleagues started to whisper, "Maybe she's not cut out for this," they said. "She dreams too big, but execution is weak." The words stung worse than the failures themselves. She tried to ignore them, tried to convince herself it was just part of the process, but the constant criticism and setbacks gnawed at her confidence. Every evening, she would sit in her small apartment, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she had made the wrong choices. Friends suggested she take a break or pursue a safer career, but the fire inside her refused to die. She couldn't give up on her vision, even when every outcome seemed to be against her. Financial pressure added to the weight. Investors pulled out, sponsors lost patience, and Leila found herself struggling to pay her rent, let alone fund her experiments. Nights became longer, filled with calculations, sketches, and self-doubt. She felt isolated, as if the world had singled her out to endure failure after failure. And yet, something inside her kept whispering, "This isn't the end. You're learning. You're growing. Keep going." After months of frustration, she made a difficult decision. Maybe stepping away from the city, the chaos, the constant judgment, the pressure, was what she needed. She didn't know what she would find, or if it would help, but she knew she couldn't keep running in circles, repeating the same mistakes. With a heavy heart, but a spark of hope, Leila packed her bags and left. The city's noise faded behind her, replaced by the vast openness of the coast. She didn't know it yet, but this move would mark the beginning of her transformation. A place where failure would teach her resilience, solitude would spark clarity, and storms would illuminate the path to her true potential. In that moment of quiet uncertainty, Leila realized something crucial. Success was never about avoiding failure. It was about facing it, learning from it, and refusing to stop, even when the world seemed to say she should. Leila arrived in the coastal town carrying nothing but a small suitcase and a head full of doubts. The streets were quiet, the waves crashing rhythmically against the shore, a stark contrast to the relentless noise and expectations of the city she had left behind. For the first time in months, she felt the weight of constant pressure begin to lift, though it left a hollow space inside her, filled with uncertainty. She took a job as a lighthouse caretaker, a role far removed from her engineering dreams. The lighthouse was old, its white paint chipped and weathered by countless storms, yet it stood tall and unwavering. At first, the work felt mundane. Polishing floors, maintaining the light, and watching the horizon seemed trivial compared to the high-stakes projects she had failed at. She questioned why she had chosen this path and whether she had made a mistake leaving the city. But slowly, Leila began to notice something remarkable. The lighthouse had endured decades of storms, relentless winds, and pounding waves, yet it never faltered. Each bolt, each brick, each careful repair mattered. Its strength came not from grand gestures, but from small, consistent acts of care. It struck her. The lighthouse survived because it had been maintained, nurtured, and preserved, never abandoned, never ignored. As days turned into weeks, Leila's perspective began to shift. The failures that haunted her in the city, the prototypes that fell apart, the criticism she had endured, they were not signs of defeat, but lessons waiting to be understood. She realized that resilience didn't mean avoiding setbacks. It meant standing firm, learning, and repairing what had been broken. She started to explore the town, talking to the locals and understanding their lives. She saw potential everywhere, abandoned buildings, small windswept fields, and rooftops begging for solar panels. Slowly, a vision began to form in her mind. Not a grand, impossible invention, but something tangible, practical, and impactful. A small-scale renewable energy grid for the town. Evenings by the lighthouse became her creative haven. She sketched designs on scrap paper, calculated energy outputs, and tested ideas mentally. Every time a plan seemed flawed, she reminded herself of the lighthouse. It had withstood storms for decades because no one gave up on it. Why couldn't she approach her failures the same way? In this quiet town, surrounded by the endless rhythm of the sea and the steady light of the lighthouse, Leila found clarity. Failure no longer felt like a crushing weight, but a guidepost. She understood that this escape, this pause from the city's chaos, was not a retreat, it was preparation. Here, away from judgment and noise, she could rebuild herself, piece by piece, just like the lighthouse had been maintained for generations. Leila realized something powerful. Sometimes, to find your true direction, you have to step away from everything you thought defined success and listen to the quiet guidance of patience, persistence, and resilience. As weeks passed, Leila's quiet days at the lighthouse began to take on a new rhythm. The solitude, once heavy and intimidating, became a space for reflection and innovation. She began to see her past failures not as the end of her journey, but as stepping stones, each teaching her something crucial about persistence, creativity, and adaptation. One afternoon, as she repaired a section of the lighthouse's railing, she paused to watch the waves crash against the cliffs. The lighthouse, standing firm despite decades of storms, seemed almost alive in its resilience. That's when it clicked. Success wasn't about avoiding mistakes or being perfect. It was about standing up after the storm, no matter how battered or broken you felt. Inspired, Leila began sketching ideas for a small renewable energy project for the town. Her designs were modest but practical: solar panels on rooftops, a few wind turbines by the cliffs, and a storage system to power the local school, clinic, and lighthouse. She worked meticulously, running calculations and simulations late into the night, combining everything she had learned from past failures with the clarity and focus the town's calm had given her. The first sketches were rough, her prototype flawed, and doubts occasionally crept back. What if this fails too? She wondered. But each time fear whispered, she remembered the lighthouse's quiet strength. It didn't give up, and neither would she. Slowly, the idea began to take shape, turning into a tangible plan she could execute. Leila approached the townspeople cautiously, sharing her vision. At first, many were skeptical. They had seen projects fail before, and an outsider promising change naturally invited doubt. But Leila's sincerity, determination, and careful planning won them over. She involved them in the process, asking for advice, listening to concerns, and showing how small, consistent efforts could lead to meaningful results. As she worked, Leila felt a shift within herself. The fear that had once paralyzed her creativity began to transform into focus and courage. Every misstep in her previous career became a lesson embedded in her approach, guiding her to refine solutions instead of abandoning them. For the first time in months, she felt confident not just in her project, but in her own resilience. By the end of the chapter, Leila's idea had grown beyond sketches on paper. The townspeople were quietly rooting for her, materials were gathered, and the first components of the energy grid were ready to be installed. She had awakened to a new understanding. Failure was not the enemy. It was a teacher, and resilience was the bridge between dreams and reality. The lighthouse stood tall behind her, a constant reminder. Storms would come, but with patience, persistence, and courage, even the most battered structures and people could shine their light for the world. Just as Leila's renewable energy project began to take shape, disaster struck. A fierce coastal storm, fiercer than any in years, swept through the town. Winds tore at rooftops, and heavy rain flooded streets. When the storm passed, Leila rushed to inspect her installation, and her heart sank. Several solar panels were shattered, wiring was ruined, and crucial equipment had been swept away. Months of work seemed to hang by a thread. The townspeople, who had once been cautiously supportive, now looked uncertain. Some whispered doubts. Maybe this was too ambitious for her, said one. Another muttered, "We should just give up before it costs more." The weight of their skepticism, combined with her own disappointment, pressed heavily on Leila. For a moment, she felt defeated. All her hard work, all her careful planning, seemed to have been undone in a single night. She sat by the lighthouse, watching the waves crash against the cliffs, feeling smaller than she had ever felt before. The failures of her past in the city flashed through her mind, and for a brief moment, the thought of giving up crept in. It would have been easier, safer, quieter. But deep inside, she remembered the lesson of the lighthouse. Its strength lay in persistence, in repairing damage and standing firm no matter how fierce the storm. Determined, Leila rolled up her sleeves. She began assessing the damage, prioritizing what could be salvaged. The townspeople, seeing her resolve, slowly returned to help. They cleared debris, repaired wiring, and supported her with whatever resources were available. Leila took each setback as a lesson, learning new techniques to make the system more resilient. She refined her designs, strengthened the installations, and worked tirelessly through nights filled with wind and the lingering smell of rain. Day by day, the project began to recover. Each repaired panel, each functional turbine, became a victory. Leila's failures, both past and present, were no longer burdens, but guides, teaching her where to reinforce, adapt, and improve. Her perseverance began to inspire the town. Children watched her determination with wide eyes, and neighbors offered help not out of obligation, but respect for her unwavering spirit. By the time the final storm had passed, Leila's project stood taller, stronger, and more resilient than before. She had faced her most formidable test yet, not just the elements, but the weight of doubt, fear, and near defeat. And she had risen, stronger than ever. In that moment, Leila realized a powerful truth. Resilience isn't proven when things are easy. It's forged in the face of storms, when every setback could have broken you, but you choose to stand anyway. The lighthouse behind her glimmered in the evening sun, a mirror of her own enduring light. Months of hard work, persistence, and learning from failure had finally paid off. Leila's renewable energy project was complete. The town, once skeptical, now buzzed with pride and excitement. Solar panels gleamed on rooftops, wind turbines spun steadily by the cliffs, and the lighthouse, her constant source of inspiration, shone brighter than ever, powered by the very system she had built. Leila stood on the cliffside, watching children play in streets lit by clean, sustainable energy. Neighbors shared smiles and gratitude, and even the most doubtful townspeople nodded in quiet admiration. What had once seemed impossible, turning a small coastal town into a model of innovation and resilience, was now a reality. Every setback, every failure, every moment of doubt had led her here. For the first time, Leila understood the true meaning of success. It wasn't about recognition, awards, or fame. It was about transformation, within herself and in the lives of those she touched. She had learned patience, the value of persistence, and the importance of adapting to challenges. She had discovered that failure was not a wall, but a stepping stone, and that resilience could turn obstacles into opportunities. Her journey had also changed the town. Residents learned to embrace innovation, to believe in persistence, and to see potential in the face of adversity. Leila's story became a living example. Storms may come, but with courage, determination, and vision, even the harshest challenges can be overcome. Looking at the lighthouse, she smiled. It had been her teacher, her guide, and her mirror. Like the structure she had cared for, she had weathered countless storms and emerged stronger, brighter, and more capable than ever before. Leila's transformation wasn't just about completing a project. It was about proving to herself and the world that setbacks are temporary, failure is instructive, and resilience is the true power that lights the way forward. As the sun set over the ocean, casting golden light across the town and the lighthouse, Leila felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. She had found her purpose, her strength, and her light. And she knew that whatever storms lay ahead, she could face them, not with fear, but with unwavering determination, ready to rise again and shine even brighter. If Leila's journey inspires you, don't wait. Hit that subscribe button, like the video, and share it with someone who needs a spark of motivation today. Join our community and discover stories that turn challenges into triumphs.